We'll include some college football from time to time, and that includes, to start things off with, as we do have the ratings from last night's college football national championship game. Georgia, of course, the historic beatdown of TCU, the 58-point win that basically most people probably turned off, halftime? Saw a lot of people making moves. Third quarter, certainly, and by the fourth quarter, I mean, how many folks were still watching at that point? Well, we got a little bit of a breakdown of that, but what we can tell you is that this was the lowest watched national championship game in over 20 years. You have to go back to the late stages of the BCS, or go back to the late 90s in the BCS, to find, the comparison here, but 17.2 million, it looks like, the number for last night's Georgia-TCU game. Lowest since 1998, I believe, is where we're at right now with that number. Over the three playoff games as a whole, the playoff averaged 20.6 million viewers, so great numbers. I think it was, 20-plus million for both the semi. Gained a little bit all the way up to 22-plus million by about 30 minutes into the game. So you're looking at, Georgia with an early lead, and the TCU obviously scored relatively early as well. You had a 10-7 ball game. An hour into it, you were at 20.79 million, so still had gained a few 100,000 people. But from 9 to 9:15, a drop-off of 4.5 million people just in that 15-minute span from 9 to 9:15 Eastern time. They went from 20.8 million viewers. 15 minutes later, it was 16.2. So off a cliff there, and then it kept dropping. An hour after that, 14.95, and as the 10 o'clock hour went on, every 15-minute intervals, it went from nearly 15 million, which is 14.95. 15 minutes later, it was 13.3. 15 minutes later, it was 11.8. And by the end of it, the game had started off at 20.3 million people and had peaked at around 22.1 million 45 minutes into it. Well, 3 hours later, half of that audience, 10.3 million by the end of that game. So from 20.3 to 10.3 by the end of it. Again, lowest watched national championship game since the BCS era started up in 1998.
Yeah, there was a part of me as it wasn't maybe even late second quarter, although it was over. There was a part of me that wondered, man, can you imagine how many people are turning off the TV?
I thought about it.
Yeah, and for a lot of reasons. Now, if you turn it off at 10 to 7, it means you have to go to sleep. You have to get up early, whatever. It still would be hard for me to do that. But I started wondering about how this would affect the overall number, and obviously it did.
We were doing our watch party last night, and about halftime, it was completely over, and I had the guys throw on hockey just to keep me to keep me entertained.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely brutal. I could see how so many people checked out.
Oh, yeah. I was texting with some folks, and they're like, I've already flipped the channel. It was like the late second quarter going into halftime. I'm like, oh, just for halftime? I'm like, no, I'm done. Like, I don't think this is going to be any more entertaining than it already has been. And you know what? It wasn't. It got absolutely worse throughout the rest of that game.
I wonder how many kept watching because they we mentioned this with Sean Merriman. People love car wrecks.
Yeah, but that wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, but people how, are they going to get the 50? Are they going to get the 60? My God, they could have gotten to whatever they wanted.
I think the people who were really intrigued in that and tuned in were people like Emery. We were sitting here watching. He had a bet on it, and he bet the over. And as the game's slowly progressing, we're like, man, this is not going to happen. It's not in Georgia keeps scoring. And then it got interesting to where he thought he had a chance. So that kept him a little in tune in the game as well.
Yeah, I think of that 10-plus million that was still left over, that was definitely bettors.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of that was definitely bettors. Because, I think most casual fans, even your hardcore fans, I guess, that you would describe, some as being more of that inclination. By halftime, this thing was well over, and the second half was just window dressing. I mean, like we said earlier, the fourth quarter was like 2 minutes into the fourth quarter, and there's Stetson Bennett's walking off the field, and then it's the defensive players are walking off the field, and they're doing a whole thing the entire fourth quarter, basically. And then, the backups come in, and they're scoring touchdowns. It's just like, that was the fourth quarter, and I can understand why that dropped off the way that it did. So that's not a surprise. With 17.2 million for the 65-7 Georgia win over TCU in the national championship game. And big drop off from the the start to the end there. So wanted to follow up with that, and that's it's going to be interesting to see like where that falls in line. I think most of the ratings are out now as far as bowl games, but I haven't seen like an actual list put together of like the most watched games, regular season, bowl games, national championship. No, Michigan, Ohio State's way up there. The semifinals are way up there as well, obviously. But need to see all the final numbers, and I'll maybe do that for Thursday, is to have the top 10 most watched games all year long. But